For a Butler Bulldog, though, it just doesn't get any better than being the head of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, does it?
Maybe if Butler would win a national championship, that'd be great. But we've had our chances, and two of them, and missed, just literally missed at the end of one of them. No, it's for a kid that grew up in Indianapolis. So my dad was the United States Auto Club yearbook editor before I was born. So I grew up in a home that, really all we talked about was motorsport, especially short track. You think about the ways that A.J. Foyt and Mario Andretti and those guys came up. That's what we loved in our house. But it was all about preparing for getting to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500. So the opportunity to sit in the chair I'm in today is one that I never would have dreamed of, and is certainly one that I don't take for granted. And one of the most important things to me is making sure that we take care of our fans, and that our fans know we do care about them. And you've mentioned it correctly. The hardest job I think we have is balancing what makes us special, which is our history and tradition, and at the same time positioning us to grow. So as an organization, we've had to look internally and say, what's really important to our DNA? What's central to our DNA? And if you changed it, you really changed the essence of who the Indianapolis 500 in particular and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is. And then you start building the circle around the outside and what things are less offensive to the core if you change them. And you have to start making those changes so we can attract those 30 and unders, so we can get more people to become race fans. But at the end of the day, you can't change 500 miles, you can't change the Yard of Brick, you can't change Memorial Day weekend. I mean, there's certain things you just, back home again in Indiana, there are things that are just so part of what that event is and what the facility is. You really have to think it through before you make change. Even in our Project 100 that we just completed before May, a lot of those changes there had to be balanced with the idea that I didn't want people to show up at the Speedway for the 100th running and say, wow, this looks brand new. That's not what we want. We wanted them to come back and go, wow, it looks like it's upgraded, but it is the Indianapolis Motor Speedway we fell in love with, or that my dad or my granddad introduced me to.
There was just this incredible, massive humanity there for the Indianapolis 500. And I was just getting goosebumps walking in through the gate that day. And to see how it all came off with, at least to us outsiders looking in, without a hitch. I got to ask you, are you more relieved that that experience is over and that it got done without a hitch, or were you thrilled with how your team did?
Well, we've got an unbelievable team. So I had no doubt that the team could pull off the 100th running of the Indy 500. That wasn't it. I am relieved because when you put 350,000 people plus in one location, there's so many things can go wrong. This world we live in today has so many outside influences that you can't predict that could happen. So really throughout the whole day, as traffic worked out okay, mostly gates were working okay, as things are going on, you're just waiting for what's the big issue that you're going to have to deal with. And we were able to get through the 100th without any problems. In fact, I think most people in our post-race survey, our scores were through the roof in terms of the experience itself. I think at some level I'm disappointed because the 100-day or the year-long run from the checkered flag of the 99th running to the checkered flag of the 100th running was a promoter's dream, right? The ability to talk about the 100th running and all of the things that had happened before, take advantage of all the history and the parts that make us special, and literally talk about it every day for 365 days a year was at one way exhausting because it was 4 and 5 a.m. days to 10 and 11 o'clock at night basically every day just to talk about the event. But the energy that this community and the racing community as a whole had for the event was magical, and I don't know that it can ever be replicated. And so there's a disappointment that goes along with it. But looking back, really, really happy. The best news out of it is we were fearful that the 100th running would be a point for people to say, I'm not going to the 500 anymore. I've gone for 50 years in a row, but I've made it to the 100th. I'm going to do something else. So we were really worried about our renewals, whether or not people would come back. Since 2011, we've been on an upward trend with the Indy 500 through 2015. Obviously, last year, selling the place out was off the charts. But our early indicators, so our renewals are up higher than they've been since early 2000s, which tells you we're going to be way ahead of 2015. So people didn't quit. People didn't stop. People that came for the first time are coming back for a second time. So it has done exactly the opposite of what we were afraid of, which is helpful.
What is a measure of success for the 101st running? What would make you happy?
As long as we continue that upward trend from 2011, we just need to keep building the Indy 500 back to that Indy 500 that we all fell in love with as young adults, whether we listened to it on the radio the first time we heard it or whether we walked through the gate holding our dad's hand. We just want to get to the point where it's coming back, and it clearly is the most important race in the world, and I feel like we're going that direction. And as I said, all indications are that 2017 should be significantly better than 2015. Now, I don't think we sell the event out. There's an outside chance we could sell out reserve seats. This year we sold out both reserved, and we made a decision. We literally grabbed folks together on Sunday night, leading a week from the 500. We were in the office debating, about 10 of us, until 2 in the morning. We came back at 6:30, went home, took a shower, rested for a while, came back at 6:30, and made a decision on that Monday that we needed to stop sales inside the infield. And we looked at a lot of different things. How many people just traditionally walk up to the 500? How many tickets do we sell the week leading into it? And then figuring that there was this 100th running push, and how far were we going to go? And that infield could have held as many people as you could put in there. But we were concerned about the overall experience. We didn't want people to show up first time ever to the Speedway and get inside the infield and realize we don't have enough portalettes, we don't have enough concessions, you can't see because there's so many people. So we made the decision that we wanted to stop selling for the infield. So I don't know that we get to a point again where we sell that out. It's possible. And it's probably unlikely we sell grandstands out, but certainly that's our focus at this point.
I got a unique look at the Indianapolis 500 because I was hanging out for a while up in the pagoda, spent a little time in the media center, and then also went out to the snake pit. So I don't think you could have had a more diverse experience if you tried. And the common theme was, this track understands us race fans. It didn't matter whether it was the ritzy folks up in the suites or whether it was the folks just paying the minimum to be out there in the snake pit and not even sure that there was a race going on. How the heck do you keep all of those different factions of the fan base so happy?
The place is huge, first of all, so it allows you to segment areas. So you can have something like the snake pit. And for those of you that don't know what it is, there used to be a real snake pit. So when I was a kid, the place that I wasn't allowed to go was inside Turn 1 because it was this organic party that took place. Most of the folks in there didn't know that there was an activity on the track. They'd had too much to drink or some other substance in their body. And in the 80s, the family, and rightfully so, felt like they needed to clean the facility up, make it more family-friendly, and they eliminated the snake pit. And at some level, it changed the character of the event, that party side of it. So we, in 2011, created our own snake pit, a little cleaner, less emphasis on illegal substances, actually no emphasis on that, and made it a music venue for kids, young adults under the age of 30 to come and just enjoy the racetrack on Memorial Day Sunday and listen to the music that they love. So literally from 8 a.m. through 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's these electronic DJs playing. And this year it was responsible for 30,000 tickets sold to the Indy 500 for adults under the age of 30. And they don't watch the race, right? They're in there just figuring out how to have fun with their buddies, drinking beer, listening to the music. So our challenge is, how do you convert those people over time from just snake pit attendees to race attendees? So how do we make them say, you know what, I've grown up, I don't want to stand down there with my buddies and drink all day, but I do this is what I do on Memorial Day Sunday. So how do we convert them? And I got a lot of pushback from fans who say, well, why do you care about them? They're not race fans. And I get that. But if we're going to grow, this is one of those points where you have to balance it. If we're going to grow and introduce ourselves to another segment of our community, music's a great way to do it. I know who they are. I have their contacts. I can talk to them all year via email. We can begin to get them used to what the Indianapolis Motor Speedway brand is. This year, we took one of our IndyCar drivers who is a huge electronic dance music fan. In fact, goes to a lot of the events around the year. Took him out in his uniform and his helmet so that we could say to the folks in the crowd, if this guy wasn't running in the Indianapolis 500 today, he would actually be here dancing with you. He would be here partying with you. He did a little bit of crowd surfing in his fire suit and his helmet, which was really cool. And then during the snake pit itself, we're giving updates throughout the snake pit that, hey, your driver who'd be here with you is actually in 27th place right now, or he's running. So we were trying to figure out a way, how do you at least begin to have that connection? So that's one of the challenges. But the pagoda, you probably spent more time in the pagoda than I did. That's one of the places I hate to be on race day. Where I really like to be is in the grandstands. And my best experience race day this year, with the new construction that we had, we actually added for the first time elevators to our upper decks, which we've never had before, and ADA accessible seats, which we'd never had before. And I spent a lot of time talking to customers who are wheelchair bound about their experience at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I was skeptical at first because we had ADA seating in the venue already. I was skeptical we could sell them out. We actually did, and the opportunity to go up and talk to these folks with tears in their eyes, talking about how They hadn't been able to sit in a seat like that in 40 years. Some had never been there before. Just to really hear from fans on something that made a big difference to them and to their family, to allow them to go to something with their family that otherwise they're sitting at home listening to it on the radio. So for me, that was one of my biggest moments, was just out walking through and thanking them for coming and getting an idea of their experiences and some of the things that we could change to make it better for next year.
And I did learn that I figured out a great place up on the balcony of the pagoda to get a great picture of the winning car crossing the finish line. So that's why I was up there, because with Indy cars, I'm too much of a coward as a photographer to be any closer than that. How did you get hooked on this racing thing in the first place? Because you've worn a lot of hats in this business.
It's my dad's fault. I mean, it's like a lot of us, right? It is somebody in your family. It's what you grow up around and what you see, and the fact that I grew up in central Indiana. It's hard to grow up here, especially when you grew up before the city had anything but the ABA Pacers, right, and the Indy 500. It was all about the Indy 500, and now we've obviously grown as a city with a lot more activities. Downtown's beautiful, the Colts, a lot of other things to make you fall in love with Indianapolis. But growing up in a house where, like I said, my dad was USAC yearbook editor, and so that's for him, our conversation was around racing. We spent our time, I wasn't allowed to go to the 500 until I was 10. That was the rule in our house. We could go to practice and qualifying, but race day, you couldn't go till you were 10. But my dad and I would spend qualifying, back when they did 4 days of qualifying, in the dining room, actually in the kitchen. We would do 3x5 cards and create our own field. And then between the first weekend and the second weekend, the field would go and sit on the dining room table. Just a lot of moments with my dad, and he's really the one that got me into it. And then I had an opportunity to be a part owner of an IndyCar team, and it started in 1997. And in 1998, we started racing the Indy Racing League as Panther Racing, and I was chief operating officer there for several years. And had a great opportunity to work with some great people and great brands like Chevrolet and General Motors that have been in my family's blood forever, and to be able to continue moving that forward at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is one of the 2 or 3 relationships that dates back to the days that the Speedway opened. I feel like I'm a caretaker of that, and I mean, just all those little connection points really are what got me to where I am.
You and the team have done a great job of transitioning this facility from a place that we all just got together once a year in the month of May to come for the big race, to an entertainment facility as well. All the big racing events are back, but I noticed when I went to your website, try to get a hint of what was going on in the way of musical events, I didn't see anything there yet, and I can't believe there won't be a big musical act this year. Any hints that you can drop?
As you start looking at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway as a facility and how do you use it more, the balancing act is we could use it every day, but certain things don't rise to the level of what the Indianapolis Motor Speedway brand stands for. So we have to be careful on what we do. In terms of a sort of a line of business that makes a lot of sense outside of motorsport, music is that one. We have so much flexibility in the facility to do small venues, to create a small venue, to create large venues like we did for the Rolling Stones. But for us, it needs to be something, if it's a standalone music event, so outside of a Brickyard weekend or an Indy 500 weekend, we feel like it needs to rise to the level of sort of a Rolling Stones. So we had the Rolling Stones on July 4th in 2015, and 55,000 people showed up for that evening concert, really the first standalone we'd ever done. We thought we'd do one in 2016, and we started down the road with Guns N' Roses, was really the first band that was available that we felt like might fit. But in a world where, in the world of music now, where artists really make their money on their touring, and people like Live Nation buy their entire dates, right? So if you've got 15 dates, Live Nation will buy them all from you, and they'll pay an average rate across all 15, knowing that they're going to lose money in some areas and make money in others, and hopefully at the end of the day they've made money. So when you try and buy a date from Guns N' Roses date, and we actually tried to buy their second Chicago date, they were north of $3 million. And that's just the band. That's not then you build the stage and the production. So you're $5.5 or $6 million into an event before you've sold a ticket. And Guns N' Roses, Rolling Stones is easier to make that commitment. They hadn't been to the market in a long time. They have mass appeal from kids in their teens to folks in their 80s, right? So you're drawing. Guns N' Roses is a smaller slice of the music world. Axl Rose is hard to predict, especially since they hadn't played in a long time. So there's an insurance component you have to buy in case he decides not to show up or something goes wrong. Nobody knew what their sound was going to be like, and for us, we felt like there was a small opportunity for a small upside, but there was a huge opportunity for a big downside. So we decided to pass this year. And we're looking again for 17, and we're really looking at more as an opportunistic way. So you have to figure out the routing. How are these guys routed through? Are there bands that are going to be routed through in a way that, okay, Indianapolis makes sense? Are you not going to be in Louisville, Columbus, Chicago? All the markets that are close to us, which hurt the draw. So it's more complicated than just saying I want this band, I want it here, because to get a good band, one of the some of the bands are $6 million plus, depending on who they are, and you just can't make that work, and that's the biggest challenge for us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Doug Boles.
Thank you.